Hola, I am Fernando Alonso, and I am delighted to welcome you to Gareth Jones on a Speed.
Oh dear, you've fallen over.
No, Ron, I haven't.
Yes. Yes, you have.
Hello and welcome to Gareth Jones on Speed. The one on my left is called Zog.
Hello.
The one on my right is called Richard.
Hello.
And I hope they're the same way round in your headphones, otherwise one of us is going to get busy.
Rotate your head.
Yes, rotate your head.
180 degrees. Like an owl.
I don't know what are your priorities when you go out and choose a car, boys. It's probably, is it a good car to drive? Is it well engineered? You know, is it something interesting?
Does
something
it look cool? Does the engine sound good?
Yeah.
Is it comfortable?
Yeah.
Does it have enough room for your golf clubs?
You play golf now?
No, of course not. Don't be silly.
Good, yeah.
I'm just saying hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
These are things that, you know, one hears does affect some people's choice of car.
Surprisingly, a lot of people say when they're choosing a car, oh, I like a blue car, or a red one, or, oh, I like my colour's bright. You know, people do actually choose a car on colour. Colour can really influence the choice you make when you buy a car. You know, the launch colour, I think we sort of touched on this before, haven't we, Richard? The launch colour for a car can provide such a strong image about that car that it will stay with you forever, and colour, for want of a better word, how you feel about that car. Do you remember the sort of that limey green that the new Fiesta was launched in? Do you remember that?
Yes, there were two sort of strong colours. There was that limey green and there was a really hot pink as well.
Yes, I remember it well.
I think they deliberately wanted to make a bit of a statement.
Yep.
A few years ago, do you remember the second generation Range Rover, the P38A, if you remember?
Oh, hello, yes.
And the launch colour for that was this sort of metallic gold. I mean, we say launch colour, you know, the one that the car's designers have said, that is the signature colour that we would like a lot of the publicity photos to be in. We would like a lot of the cars that are given to the press at first, so to be on the cover of Autocar and all the rest of it. We want it to be that colour. That is the colour we believe sums up what we want from this car. And for the second generation Range Rover, it was this weird metallic gold, sort of almost the colour of Wii, which rather summed up some of the quality control in that car as well. But it was a really weird choice, because I don't think gold cars weren't fashionable then and haven't been.
And never have
since.
been. No, but presumably choosing the colour for your launch car, or choosing the launch colour for each model, is, I don't suppose for a moment the question of what is going to be the most popular colour ever comes up, because that doesn't particularly matter. What you're trying to do is to choose a colour that, in the first place, is going to get you as much coverage as possible, so it pays to be a little bit more adventurous, not to have your boring colours. That's going to show off the car to its best advantage, so that, you know, in as many pictures as possible you can get a better idea about the lines of it, rather than them being slightly disguised by the kind of colour that it is. There are going to be a bunch of factors that come into what is the best colour for your launch vehicle.
But I think some of it is about making a statement. You know the BMW X1?
Yeah.
It was a terrible car. Yeah. And the launch car for that extended to the initial stock that every dealer received. So they got their first car, was their demonstrator car.
And it'd be the one that we parked on the forecourt and the people...
Exactly, so it's the first time a lot of people would see it.
And
so a mustardy beige colour, is
well, I would describe it as more a sort of orangey, like a really strident, sort of cinnamony orange colour. That was what they chose for that car. And it looked terrible. I mean, it's a terrible looking car, but it looked especially terrible.
With that particular colour, yeah.
But that's the thing. Sometimes I guess they want to make a statement. That was just the statement: was this is a terrible car? Look, what an awful colour it is. People still bought them.
Apart from the colour of a car, you know, the paint that covers a car these days is quite clever. It does all sorts of other things as well. Did you know that car paint is still slightly liquid? It always flows, or fluid I should say, rather than liquid, fluid, so that you get self-healing car paint. You know, if you gouge a slight mark, the rest of the stuff flows into that canyon over time to fill it. Did you know that? Ever so slightly?
I didn't know that, and I'm sceptical. I want to see some evidence of this. I'm not sure.
I know that if you have galvanised cars, I remember Audi making a big deal about this when they made all their cars galvanised. They were sort of the first people to do it.
6-year warranty.
So underneath the paint, I don't know, there's some kind of extra layer. The idea was if the car got scraped, there was some layer that sort of bled into the wound that maintained the rust proofing. But I don't quite understand that, because I thought that galvanised metal is galvanised metal. It's like, it's just, you know.
Although, who knows, maybe there was something in one of the paint layers or whatever that's just above that when you've made that scratch, it's releasing something that's going to have a reaction with the metal. The analog will be something like, what happens when you scratch a bit of aluminium. I mean, this is much more simple, but aluminium is a very reactive metal that appears to be very unreactive because it develops this very tough, unreactive layer of aluminium oxide on the surface as soon as you expose it to air. And if you scratch a bit of aluminium and scratch the aluminium oxide off, it doesn't immediately burst into flames, which it would do kind of
if it was painted over a Zeppelin, for instance.
Well, if you could magically make the reaction between oxygen and aluminium that's making the aluminium oxide form, if you could stop that happening and just get straight to the burning stuff, it would catch fire. You scratch your aluminium and you've broken through the aluminium oxide layer and exposed the bare metal, and as soon as that happens, it reacts with the air and it reforms some new aluminium oxide. So what's happening in the case of the Audi is maybe there's something in the bottom layer. I don't know. It is.
I do know that car paint stays quite soft for a while after a car is made.
Yeah.
More so than it used to because of the changes in paint.
Technology.
Water-based.
Yeah.
But you could do an awful lot more with paint as well. I've always thought that this idea that you could have photoelectric paint. So instead of having photoelectric cells all over your car which turn sunlight into energy and drive the car, you simply paint your car with something which has got nanotechnology, nano cells built into it, and you get a freely charging car just by painting it. It's been mooted for a little while this now, but I haven't seen any evidence of it actually. Have you seen any paint on photoelectric cells yet?
And presumably the two big stumbling blocks are, one, making solar cells that are small enough to fit in flakes of paint. Although if plant cells can do it, then maybe we can. So maybe you go for some kind of bioengineered thing. So that's one. But the second thing, how do you get the power from your little flakes of paint to inside the car? It's no good having 100 million individual, super efficient, tiny little solar cells all over your car if any electricity that they might be able to generate doesn't get any further than that little flake of paint.
Again, taking the analogy of the living world, they would have to have microfibres. What do you got? Mycelium, the stuff that's under the ground of mushrooms. Kind of a web of superfine hairs leading to your battery, but you would then have to have an insulating layer of paint between that and the bodywork of the car. Otherwise, you open the door and you electrocute yourself.
It's probably going to work out that if there's a solution there, it's going to be some kind of bioengineered thing. You're basically going to be growing some kind of high-tech skin for your car, like growing a leaf all over it. It will absorb the sun's energy and however it's storing that energy and getting it to the car. You could come up with some bioengineered surface or material that would produce tiny amounts of fossil fuel alternative, a bit of biodiesel maybe.
But wouldn't that reduce the mass of the paint on the car? So you'd eventually have a car that was completely naked.
It wouldn't reduce the mass of the paint. I'm pretty sure that whatever they would massively increase the weight of paint.
But you mentioned a leaf over the car there, and you talked about biotechnology, which brings me to something that Richard and I have both spotted recently. This idea of a luminous paint on your car, which is what is now available on the Nissan Leaf if you ask for it specially. It's not
I was a bit sketchy on that. I don't know if they were saying you could actually order it, or if
it's not an official option
to in the future, but
you can buy it, I believe. You can. It is actually available. It's not an official option. So it's luminous paint, bioluminescent paint. No, not photoluminescent paint. Sorry. Well, it absorbs the sun's UV in the day and then just, like your watch, gives it off at night. That would be spooky, wouldn't it? A Nissan Leaf.
I just thought a whole street full of cars gently glowing at night would look rather jaunty, but I hadn't really considered maybe there's some downsides. I don't know what they are.
Can I just point out?
A black car because it would sort of.
Can I just point out that yowling you're hearing is Finn, our cat, shouting in the kitchen. He thinks it's his dinner time, which it probably is at this time of the day.
Shall we shut the door?
He'll just shout louder. Yeah, we just have to deal with it. I'm sorry. Would you have a luminous car? Or is it a bit too
reflection,
much?
No.
On reflection.
No, that wasn't meant to be a joke. I thought I saw it. I saw the picture of this thing, and I went, "What a nice idea! How brilliant! That would look like quite a good thing." And also, I suppose there's some safety benefit because
I'm sure
someone hits you at night. They go, "Oh, sorry, mate, I didn't see you."
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, you did. I'm glowing.
Yeah,
but I don't know whether you'd actually. I suppose if you're an early adopter, you might look like a bit of a divvy driving around as a mobile advertising hoarding.
Yeah.
If you were an estate agent or something, and you wanted people to see your logo even at night.
Good
You could
thinking.
have duplicitous scum written down the side of your car, or whatever the name of your estate agency was, and people would be able to see it.
But the thing that I wonder, though, is from my memories of using luminous paint years ago, painting models of one kind or another, luminous paint is fantastic when it's glowing in the dark, but it looks kind of rubbish in daylight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't seen pictures of the Leaf with the luminous paint job, but that would be my sort of first worry, concern about the appearance, is how it's going to look when it's not glowing in the dark.
I saw a picture where they'd done a little split screen of the same car in the daytime and at night, and in the daytime it just looked like a white Nissan Leaf.
Okay.
Unless they cheated that. Because I know what you mean. And also, because I'm quite a sucker for an old watch, and like this was a sort of 40-year-old watch, and you can see the loom, as they call it there, you know, it's gone really sort of yellowy. And if your car goes all milky and yellowy over time, then that's not going to be good, is it?
No,
There's
yeah,
nothing-
will the paint wear?
Although, mind you,
will it
paint
sort of
goes all
degrade
off,
quicker
doesn't it? A
than-
lot of cars
Eventually it
peel.
does, yeah.
All those
There's-
pink VWs and Vauxhalls.
There's nothing sadder than high-vis jackets, which are no longer high-vis. So, you know, people still wear them. It's like, didn't that used to be a high-vis jacket? It's now just a sort of an amorphous, even yellowy, pissy colour, really. Oh, imagine that on your car. But what I would do, I would paint the whole car evenly with paint. I would use it to accentuate design features of the car, you know, make it sort of a skeleton frame around the outside, highlight the strength of the doors and stuff like this, so at night it had a different sort of structural appearance. That would be interesting.
Or you could get some of this paint
yeah.
if you had a mate who had a white or a silver car. And as an aside, last year the most popular colour for new cars was white.
Of course.
For a change.
Used to be
Fact in there.
And with silver for
Used to
most
be-
Yeah, it was
the
silver
last
for about
20
20 years.
yeah.
But yeah, you could just get some of that paint and write rude words on a friend's car.
Yeah, and then they're only going to know
never know.
when...
Well, they might never know. They started driving past the shop window at night and they'd go, hang on a minute, it says Torts on my door. Well, oh, wait a minute!
This is 614 to base, 614 to base. Time is 23:47 hours. Suspect is leaving house now. Suspect is leaving house and proceeding in a westerly direction to... 614 to base. Suspect has seen me. Repeat, suspect has seen me. Again. Repeat, again. 614 to base. Can we please get this bloody Nissan Leaf resprayed?
Sniff Petrol with Gareth Jones on speed!
One of the great advantages of having that awful Richard Porter on this programme is he's someone who drives a number of cars on a regular basis. So Sog and I both get to drive a variety of cars now and again, but not as frequently as you, Richard. What have you driven recently that's tickled your trousers? If I can use a motoring term.
It's been a lot of stuff that's just sort of fine. New VW Passat, good, but...
I like the new grille
It's a
on
nice
the
looking
Passat.
car. It's a really handsome car.
Yeah.
It feels very roomy, and the interior is a bit nicer than a lot of
And
other
top
cars.
turbo diesel engine.
Yeah, it's all right, I suppose. I mean, you
With an auto.
just
As good as you'd
zipping it
expect
along.
a new VW to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you do that thing where you go across a
Yeah.
country road and you sort of ease it up the pace a little bit, and it's got paddles because it was a DSG, and you play with the paddles, but then you just always encounter that very narrow power band that diesels have, and it sort of feels unnecessary to start zipping up and down the paddle shift, and you just put it back in auto. And it's fine. Anyway, it's a perfectly civilised, lovely car. I couldn't really fault much about it. It does what it does. I'm driving the new Vauxhall Corsa at the moment.
I am sorry.
It's, well, I don't know. I always thought the Corsa used to be a fairly awful car, but it's a perfectly fine car. I still have a Fiesta or a Polo. But
I love the way you said that with a furrowed brow. It's a fine car.
it's just, it's
Also,
fine.
a reluctant,
Despairing, yeah.
to admit
It has
but-
got one major flaw.
It's a Vauxhall.
There's that, but...
Not that they build bad cars.
Well, you
just
said
the
it now.
brand. The brand is just difficult for a lot of people, I think.
They're a bit passe now. It's a bit.
There's
it's a
something.
rather sort of,
there's
you know,
also, I do
1970s
believe that Vauxhalls
yeah,
are the
you know,
worst driven cars on the road. I've only recently come to this. I know that on
Those
Top Gear we always
X5s
go on
though.
about Peugeots and things like that, which I think is also true. For some reason, I don't know why Peugeots attract elderly drivers particularly.
They do.
I think the Vauxhalls, perhaps it's law of averages. There's more of them out there because them and Fords, but I don't think Fords are badly driven. Ford, it's almost
No,
Ford's
I agree
drivership
with you.
reflects Ford's Ford's mass appeal. You get brilliantly driven Fords, you get badly driven Fords, you get something in between. But Vauxhalls, I just think, are almost universally driven by people who are completely inept at driving.
However, if the badge was changed to Opel, would they drive better?
I don't...
I think they might drive a little bit. There's something... I mean, and maybe this is just the benefit of distance, that as a citizen of the UK rather than mainland Europe, but it's just the distance to the Opel brand. But it seems to me like there's just a little bit more pizzazz about Opel than Vauxhall.
Yeah.
Well, let's not forget the Opel Monza.
There you go.
Yeah.
Pizzazz. But...
You mean the Vauxhall Royale Coupe?
It was, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
But it was better when it became the Monza.
Oh,
and you got
yeah.
digital instruments and all that sort of stuff. It's obviously the Opelness came through. Anyway, so there we go. Vauxhall's terrible drivers. I always find myself driving the Corsa thinking, should I just cut across these lanes? Or I'll just stay in the outside lane even though I'm only doing 50 because I'm in a Vauxhall. Everyone's going to expect it.
You don't want to confuse them, do you?
No, exactly. That's the
They
thing.
always say you should never do anything
chaos
unexpected
theory.
on the road.
Exactly.
Yeah, do what the other drivers expect. So
I could be the
drive like a
one
moron.
well-driven Vauxhall that's caused an accident through not people expecting me to be a blithering idiot and actually paying attention to the road ahead and behind. Anyway, we digress. The most interesting car, I was going to say, that I've driven in the past few weeks is the Alfa Romeo 4C.
Ooh.
A little coupe.
Not the cabriolet, it's a cabriolet.
The cabriolet's not out yet, not over here certainly, so this is just the coupe, which still has those funny headlights.
I was
that
about
make
to
it
start
look
with that.
A bit sort of like some kind of grotesque insect. They're not
Or
very
eye
nice.
infection, you once described.
Yeah, it does. It looks like it's got an eye infection. If you woke up and your eye was like that, you'd go to the doctors really quickly.
The convertible doesn't have that.
Doesn't now.
Change the lights.
I don't know whether it will in Europe because
really?
those lights that have been on the convertible in the pictures are because it is an American spec car. And American spec 4Cs differ quite substantially from European ones.
Really?
Different headlights. Different understructure, or at least a modified understructure to comply with safety regs. They've got more airbags. It weighs a whole load more than the European spec one, yes. And yet, that car was always supposed to be completely integral to Alfa Romeo returning to the United States. That is the first car that they're going back there with after not selling cars for donkey's years. So you'd think they would know from the off what it needed to do. Also, the implication being it's that the European version is less safe.
Yeah.
It's a hard marketing one to go, no, it really is because the American safety regs are overzealous. No one's going to buy that. No one believes there's such a thing as too much safety, I think. A lot of car buyers want their car to be as safe as it can be.
Yeah, true.
Even sports cars.
Yeah, although a kind of boringly rational person who tries to be really boringly rational and that's balanced, I can see that actually you can have well-intentioned safety regulations that don't actually achieve what they intend. You know the
seatbelt anchorage points in a car, the bit where the belt meets, the bottom of the B pillar, basically, that point there. The European standard for how strong that has to be is based around a certain load applied as a short, sharp shock, because that is what happens in an accident. The US standard for that thing...
Don't tell me it's the same load plus 3 quarter-pound burgers and a large gulp Coke.
No, it's not that.
Okay,
it's more load, though. You're right on that score. But it's applied over, I think it's 9 seconds.
Really?
No accident applies a sustained load to a mounting point for 9 seconds.
Yeah.
But that's what the US regulators require. So you're right, they are overzealous. But I just think if you had an accident in a 4C and a beloved pet or family member died and you survived, you'd think, well, what if we'd been in an American version of this car? Well, maybe we both have survived. I'm extrapolating a little.
So I'm going to sue Alfa for selling a substandard product not as good as other products that was available.
Anyway, these things didn't cross my mind at the time. I was driving it so much, but
I was driving it like a maniac.
I borrowed it for a week, and I got in it, I drove it a bit. First of all, it's quite cramped. It's not quite an Elise, but it's of that ilk. If you ever got into an Elise with a very high still on the low roof, and you sort of have to slot yourself through. So it's slightly undignified if you're tall like me to get in and out. But it's fine.
This is where it pays, and I very rarely get to say this, but this is where it really pays to be a short guy.
I think you
maybe tall giraffe types. You have a difficult. We just love these cute little cars. We just slip in there and.
Well, now, one thing I think even you would have found still a little bit odd, the driver's seat backrest does not recline much beyond what feels like vertical.
Really?
Yeah. And I thought at first it's because I've got the seat right back, so it's against the bulkhead because the engine is behind you. But no, I moved the seat forward to see if I could get a bit more recline in, and There wasn't any. Now, I got plenty of headroom. I didn't need to recline for that reason, but it was just that I felt like I was in church. I was just sitting bolt upright. After a while, I got used to it, but it was a bit odd. I'll be honest, I got in that car, I drove it for a bit, I drove out into the countryside, I drove a bit on the roads, and I hated it.
What?
I thought it was absolute and utter. It felt like the power delivery was too peaky, very, very sort of sudden turbo boost comes in. The steering, it's unassisted steering, but it follows cambers and gets knocked off, and it feels very unstable somehow. And then because the combination of that is sort of quick but rather unpredictable steering, and I was on a slightly damp road, and this sudden rush of turbo boost, and even it's got traction control, it just felt like it was sort of slightly out of control. If you tried to
like an 80s turbo.
Like an 80s turbo. I mean, maybe not like quite that bad.
Interesting.
I was like, oh no, this is just...
Because I'm sure you wanted to like it. You know,
well,
how could you not want to like it?
I wasn't sure about it. In the pictures, you see it in real life, and it's a hell of a good looking car. Even with its eye infection, it is a great looking car, and it has star quality. People are drawn to it. Also, people seem to think it costs much more than it does because it looks like a shrunken supercar. And you explain to them it's only got a 4-cylinder engine and it's not a Ferrari rival as such, but they think it is because it looks like it should be. It has this magnetic sort of star appeal. It's a hell of a thing to see on a normal street amongst normal cars. But I had this real downer on the way it drove, and then I drove it a bit more, and then it started to sort of all make sense. It's very unusual for a modern car in that you have to get your eye in with it. You have to start understanding its little foibles. The fact that the steering is tugging and pulling, but if you just accept that it's fundamentally still going in the direction you want it to,
it's just giving you
it's a bit too noisy. You know, we're used to, even Porsches and things that used to have 911s, used to have quite sort of busy steering. The wheel was slightly moving in your hand as it followed the cambers and imperfections of the road, and they've sort of engineered that out to the most degree now.
Absolutely,
The Alfa does it a great deal. I mean, more than even an Elise or something. It's just all the time busy, but you get used to that. And you get used to also just sort of driving it in a different way, so you keep it on boost, so you don't get the boost kicking in suddenly, which seems to unsettle.
I'm reminded of something you said once, Richard. Talk about a car being easy to drive.
Yeah.
There are very few difficult to drive cars these days. You get into the gear off you go, it works slightly easier than the others. This strikes me then as being a car that is not necessarily difficult to drive, but requires a mindset to drive. It requires a driving style and technique. So it's a driver's car.
Exactly.
That's the thing. And you have
that's
to
the
learn
very definition of one, isn't it?
You learn its foibles. You learn how to get the best out of it, and then I think you bond with it all the more. So after thinking it was completely rubbish and hating it, by the time it was taken away again, I absolutely adored it. I mean, it's not perfect by any means. The nearest thing I could think of is that it's actually, in an odd kind of way, quite old-fashioned, in that it needs...
but in a good way.
Driving in a certain way. You need to adapt to it.
Yep.
It's not trying to adapt to you.
Like driving a Morris 1000.
You can't... Well, yeah, exactly. Like old cars used to. You have to know their foibles. You know, and the still things... The rear visibility is terrible. The driving position is sort of unusual, if not completely uncomfortable. The radio is so appalling you might as well not have it, which they will just never put one in for you if you so choose. It's got various other sort of strange quirks and things. Some of them are sort of what you would call, in that patronising way that people always apply to Italian cars, character. And there's a weird one, like you have to put your foot onto the brake pedal to start it, and then to select a gear. And if you're turning around, you need to do that when you go into reverse, and then when you go back into first, because it's a paddle shift with buttons to select reverse. But you can't just have your foot on the brakes, enough that it makes the brake lights illuminate, and even would have some slight stopping effect. You have to really mash it to the floor. And before you learn that, you're there trying to turn around, and you're in the street and you push the reverse and nothing's happening, and it's binging at you and going, so push your foot on the brake pedal. I am doing! But then when you learn it, you're like, I know how to do this now. If someone else got in this car, they wouldn't know how to do it, but I know this because this is my car now.
That's because you're a proper driver.
Well, that's it, but it's just, I think it's just that it's a bonding experience with a car that is flawed but lovable, and that actually makes you like it more. And I suppose that it pains me to say this, that it makes it a proper Alfa Romeo.
It makes a proper Italian car.
Real driver's
driver's car. Now, the thing is, I do think I'm staggered they've done this car because for a number of reasons. It's got a carbon fibre tub, like a McLaren 12C or like a...
Yeah, but how often do you have a bath when you're driving?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think they've spent a lot of money on doing that and maybe cut some corners and other things.
Okay, yeah.
Dashboard plastics and stuff. But I think you would get in that car if you were test driving it at a dealer and you would drive it around the block and you would come out and you would hate it. You'd go, the seat's too upright, dashboard's a bit tinny plastic, the wheel is jiggling around all over the shop. it just feels strange and odd, and you would never get into the character of the car. They're never going to sell one from someone who's just had a test drive, which I think is mistake number one. Secondly, it's an uncompromising car. It's hard to get in and out of. It's not luxurious, bare floor. It's noisy. It's very noisy, in fact, when you're on the motorway. And this is the car they're going back into America with. Like, it's an unbelievably idiotic decision. They should be going back into America with a car like the 8C, which is a very sexy coupe, but which is basically, you can drive like a GT car. It's a Maserati, essentially, underneath. And you can swoosh around in it, but it looks achingly cool. It makes a brilliant noise, and it would say to people, Alfa Romeo's back. What they're going back into America with is this sort of speciality, hardcore driver's car. I'm sure you could have one as your only car, but it's not. It's a weekend plaything. It's a toy because it's at its best in the dry, or very, very slightly damp when you can kick the tail out as well, which is quite entertaining.
Aren't Alfa Romeo actually going into America with the, what's it called, the Dart, the Dodge Dart? It's basically built on the 159 platform,
It's
isn't
on
it?
the Giulietta platform.
Giulietta platform, that's it, not the 159. I'm showing me age. I still think it's a modern car. Yeah.
Well, that's
But that's not getting the Alfa brand out there, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
It may be doing something for Alfa's bottom line, but it's not reintroducing the Alfa brand to the States.
There are high hopes
it sounds like it's not the right car to do it with. But it sounds great.
It is, but that's the thing. But honestly, if I had it outside now and I said, go and have a quick drive in that, you'd come back and you'd go, what are you talking about? It's awful, I swear. It feels so strange and unlike any other car. But I think that's the thing. Once it gets under your skin, it's a sensational thing.
Right, bring it next one. Hello, lad. What's the name?
I'm Will Stevens.
Why does they want to drive for Manor and that?
Well, I really admire your determination and spirit trying to get back into Formula One, and I think I'd be a good fit with the team.
Oh, aye. And what's their record like?
Well, I've tested for Caterham and I drove in the Abu Dhabi race for them last year and...
No, lad, not the racing record. Your credit record.
Oh,
Go on, lend us a tenner. I'll pay you back in that.
Gareth Jones on speed.
The risk of being an enthusiastic driver, and by that I mean someone who drives enthusiastically with gusto and...
You mean too fast?
Yes, probably, occasionally. But a lot of the time, you drive a lot of the time. We like driving, make the choice, shall I go in the train, shall I go in the car, or go in the car. You increase the chances of things going wrong, there being an accident. Now, luckily, I haven't had any pranks for quite some time in any serious way, but I did nerf a car, apparently, on Church Street the other day. Violet was in the car with me. We were stopped at the traffic lights. Woman gets out of the car in front. You just hit my car. Really? I do apologise. I wasn't aware that I'd even touched you there. I'm just stopped. So let's pull over and have a look. Not a mark on either of the cars. If I had touched her, I doubt if the molecules of our paint had actually touched. It was just a glance. And she was all right about it, if not a little concerned. But I don't know. I think she probably
You might be imagining it.
I think probably her foot slipped on her brake or acceleration. She thought she'd been hit and hadn't. I was pretty sure I hadn't touched her. There was no evidence to show that. But that was my nearest miss recently. But you had slightly more than a near miss, didn't you, sir?
I did. To my great surprise, I was in traffic just 3 or 4 days ago. A taxi driver reversed into me in traffic. This was a proper London black cab driver, not your dodgy minicab or Uber driver. I suppose we're going to have to be referring to that a lot more. But yeah, I was kind of the first stunned by, because it's a taxi driver, they don't usually make mistakes, you trust them to get it right and have very good judgment on these things.
Why was he reversing?
And then outraged, obviously. Well, he was just doing a little 3-point turn, he just picked up his fare and he was just turning around, and because of where it was by junction, he was just doing a quick 3-point turn. I just felt the little bump and I realised that as he was backing up, so he just backed into my door.
Into your door?
Yeah, and then he pulled away, so I hopped out, shouted at him, and he pulled over, and we established before the lights even turned green that in fact there was no visible damage, because he'd bumped just where one of the stickers on the door is the sort of roundel that used to have a Le Mans number on it, and is looking increasingly tatty, but it turns out it has a useful function of protecting your paint a bit more, and he was going slow, so it was just such a light touch that he didn't bend any metal. So it was all fine, no harm done, we went on our way. And I've never had a taxi driver make that kind of mistake before, but you do get those little low-speed things from time to time, and they're not always kind of quite so innocent as that. You know, they do sometimes.
Well, in a way, it's part and parcel of particularly living in the city. Your car's going to get dinged. But I was a few weeks ago, I was in a motorway service area on the M40, and I'd gone to the loo, and my wife was in the car with our baby, and just as I got in, she went, a man behind just backed into our car. Just before he came back, he just nudged into the car. I was about to say so. I went, right, I got out, and there's this bloke in an old Merc E-Class cabrio, and he was still touching the back bumper of our car, and he was getting out, and I went, oi, you've just hit my car. And he went, what? I went, you've just hit my car. Here, move your car forward. And he went, all right, mate, calm down. I was like, no, there's no calm down. Move your car forward. And he went, all right, keep your hair on. And he was standing there by his car rather than getting into his car and moving it so it wasn't touching my bloody car. And eventually he did, and I looked, and there was no damage done, because I didn't know how hard the impact was, it wasn't there. But, you know, I thought if he's cracked the bumper or something a little bit, it's just irritating. And he hadn't. But his first words should have been, oh, I'm sorry, rather than, all right, calm down. You don't have the moral high ground if you just dinked into another man's car.
He's the one who's in the wrong. Yeah. It's not you that's
if I'd done that, I'd be mortified. I remember I used to have a little smart roadster, and I was... this was amateur hour. I was a schoolboy error of the highest order. Traffic lights, yellow box junction, car in front, Mini, went, and I thought, oh, look, they're going to go through and pass the yellow lines. I'm going to follow across before the light goes red. And then they stopped. Not completely on the yellow box, but I was sort of just back wheels still in the yellow box. And I hate people who block. So I'll ease forward a little bit more. I'll ease forward as much as I can. Because it's got a paddle shift box in it, those smarts, so it's not easy. You can't just creep the clutch. I think I just sort of lurched forward a little bit and just the gentlest dump into the back bumper of the Mini. But enough to alert the driver. And she got out, and rather than sort of come to me, she got out and she just looked down between the two cars, and then she looked at me. I had the roof back on the Smart, so I took my seatbelt off and popped my head out of the sunroof and went, I'm sorry, and she didn't say anything. She just looked at me and kind of went, and just did that kind of...
Richard is giving a very stern look.
Imagine the sternest, most disgruntled look that you could give someone. That's what she did, and then she just got back in her car and drove on. I was still there, like some kind of crap meerkat with my head poking out of the roof of the Smart going, no, I really am sorry.
I quite like the style of the stern look.
Yeah, that's good. It's withering. It's like when somebody cocks up on the road. You know, when you see someone, they've blocked a junction or they've just done something stupid, like you're coming through a gap and they decide to try and come through the other way when they could have just waited. And I found myself, I think it's a sign of getting older, sometimes now, where in the past I might have gone and then made some, adult hand gestures, or once, years ago, when a bloke did a really stupid move where he just blocked a road, and then when I finally pulled alongside him, I put a window down and I just went, what did you do that for? And he started going, it's because I couldn't see the thing. And I just went, that's absolute bollocks. And he went, no, it's not. And I just went, oh, off. And my girlfriend at the time, as we drove on, she went, off.
Yeah, really?
Why did you say that?
Well, on the other hand, I've very rarely sort of expressed disapproval by honking or...
No.
But one does do it occasionally. First time I ever did it, this was after I've been driving for really quite a few years, but the first time I did give someone a little toot, because they were parked in an incredibly bad place just in the bend of a road, and gave me a honk as I went past, and then they caught up with me at the next lights. It was a plainclothes policeman.
Oh no!
And they expressed the opinion that I really shouldn't be sounding my horn in
it should never be used as
the highway code. Yeah. Do you know what?
And I couldn't argue. I just would rather, because I thought you were parked in a slightly dangerous place. Now I'm terribly sorry, officer.
I would like two things. Like I was going to say, to finish the thought from before about, I think as I get older, rather than gesturing and shouting and swearing and things, which I hope I never did too much, but I find myself just going,
yeah, me too,
shaking my head, almost just shaming people for their behaviour. But I would like two things on cars. I think we talked about in the past how I thought there should be a I'm going straight on light in the middle.
Yeah, good. Yes,
I've decided what I would also like is You know, Le Mans cars have that button they press and it strobes the headlights very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And you just to get people out of the way.
Yeah, they're going, here I come.
For when you're coming up, you're going to lap someone. You can't use it if you just want to overtake someone who's on the same lap as you. That would be considered
But it's worth a
aggressive.
try.
Well, that's the thing. I'd quite like it if they could do it in such a way that it's not aggressive. Because the thing is, you know, when you've got someone dithering in the wrong lane on the motorway, I sometimes use the continental technique of you put your outside indicator on.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
hope the
just-
flashing
yeah,
just
yeah.
catches their attention in the mirror and they go, okay, this guy wants to push on through. Because I think flashing the headlights is quite an aggressive thing.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
But I would love to have just the burst of light, just to go, hi, I'm here, and I would like to come through now. And it would be also useful, around where I live, narrow streets. Now, when people let you through gaps, I'm a big stickler for the wave.
I agree. Yeah.
I was driving in the US not that long ago with a mate, and someone let me through a gap on a sort of back street in Los Angeles, and I waved, and he just went, we don't do that. And I went, what? And he went, no, we don't do that. And I spoke to my wife's American. I said to her afterwards, I've never really noticed you people don't wave thank you, because most of the roads are wide enough you don't get into that situation.
Yeah.
And she went, oh God, you didn't wave at someone. I went, yeah. And she
could have shot
"That's
you."
She went, that's like a gang sign some places.
Wow.
Okay, fine. But I thought, when it's dark on narrow streets around where I live and people let you through, you know, you do the sort of flash, but it can be mistaken for the, I'm letting you through. So I just thought, if I had my little starburst light, that would say thank you, because you can't see hands at night. Or I wear one illuminous glove.
Okay.
My solution for the twerp driving in the centre lane when there's nothing in the left-hand lane would be to have an almost Inspector Gadget-like arm that could come out and reach over the offending car in front and lower a piece of card with a message written on it in front of the windscreen that says, "F*** off, you crap driving pot.
There's some-
Please kindly move to the left, allowing the rest of the world to get by at a reasonable pace."
Okay, I do like the idea, but if you've got the technology to do that, you've got the technology to do the wacky racist thing of all of a sudden your car just goes on stilts.
Yeah.
You know, your suspension goes from being regular struts to kind of, 20-foot tall telescoping thing, and you just drive past the thing with your wheels passing on either side of their vehicle, and that's how you pass.
I reckon that's the next generation of 4x4. Land Rover will make that an option so people can have ultimate, what do they call it, functionality? Ultimate,
Yeah, I'll call that ultimate functionality, definitely.
The traffic, just go through.
Or we just ban Vauxhalls. Lane discipline is no longer an issue.
You've been listening to the acerbic attitude of Richard Porter.
Goodbye.
And
The logical witterings.
well, that's usually what normally comes out. Do we get that today? We usually do.
I hope so.
Yeah. And I was Gareth, and I just fill the gaps. See ya.
To send us an email, see pictures, get song lyrics, join our Facebook fan site, follow us on Twitter, or to find out about sponsorship opportunities, go to garethjones.tv. Gareth Jones on Speed is made in London by Whiz Bang.
Gareth Jones on Speed!